Look at that. He's bald. You know this is going to be a serious opinion. Or complete cope. One of the two.
After 12 days with Starfield, it's time to dive into the contrasts, the highs and lows of Bethesda's latest.
How's he sane after 12 days of Starfield? Most people don't even last the first 20 minutes of Starfield.
Venture. As it turns out, the game has taken quite a few unexpected turns for me. Some of them are really good, and some not quite so much.
Okay.
Okay, so up front, I want to say that I've really been enjoying Starfield. The game has a lot to offer from exploration.
That's a red flag. My dating profile currently has, if you enjoyed Starfield, it's not happening.
To questing, from combat to ship and base building. It truly is a game I can get lost in for hours at a time. And like Skyrim and Fallout before it, Starfield is a game I'll be returning to again and again.
Okay.
It provides an experience that very few other games actually offer. Also, I think it's important to say that first and foremost, I approached this game with the full expectation of finding a Bethesda game and not a...
There we go. There we go. Let's ignore the rest of the world that thinks that this is shit, but let's rate Starfield uniquely as a disabled child, aka in the, well, it's a Bethesda game category. So, let's compare it to other Bethesda games. Oh boys, strap yourselves in because we know what this is gonna be.
Space sim. Yet that said, whilst not a full-on sim, Starfield is undoubtedly a space game. And this leads me into one of the areas
I don't know about that
previously said is what I believe to be at the title's weakest.
Okay, let's dismantle everything he says.
That is spaceflight. Now, the spaceships themselves in Starfield are really good. I find this to be true both aesthetically and functionally. I've enjoyed customizing ships, upgrading them.
I mean, I actually agree with the fact that the insides of the ship are fun and good. But nothing else about it, it is good.
Inside of them and even flying them. And ship combat, whilst fairly basic, is also very decent.
Ship combat is not decent. Ship combat is fucking stupid. Ship combat is literally the weakest part of the game, especially considering sometimes the ship combat bugs out and your tracking thing locks on something that no longer is there, so you need to shoot manually. And shooting manually without the lock on is pretty much impossible.
So where is the problem? Well, what makes this particular section of the game weak to me isn't really the spaceships, but rather space itself. Now, over the previous year or so, I've repeatedly pointed out that space in Starfield might be restricted. Of course, we didn't know, but it seemed likely, based on what Bethesda had been saying, that space would be bounded to areas near planets. The fact this turned out to be true, whilst not entirely unexpected,
What do you mean not entirely unexpected? It literally was marketed as a space game where you can travel between stars, no restrictions, and explore whatever you feel like. Bro, everyone knows that this game was literally marketed like that.
Is still somewhat disappointing. Now, I was hoping that even with these restricted and bounded areas of space, those environments would nevertheless be a little bit more open with much more to discover. What I would like to have seen is the ability to travel.
Admittedly, yeah, even for a restricted space, these environments are ridiculously restrictive.
For hundreds or even thousands of miles in any direction and make various discoveries and encounters. Sure, in reality, space is generally empty, isn't it? But it is first and foremost a video game that we're talking about here. So ultimately, having these discoveries limited to such restricted and bounded areas of space is very limiting to the game as a whole.
Yep, it's boring.
In fact, the entire reason I mentioned this part at the front of the video is because it is one of the elements that really holds Starfield back from being a much better game. I'm going to come back
You know what's the funny part? When you sit into the cockpit and you press, you take off the planet, sometimes you can see before the animation, before the cutscene animation starts, where you fly off the planet, that the fighting controls actually pop up. You can see your missiles, lasers, and all of that shit while you're still on the planet. Which means at some point, Bethesda initially most likely wanted the game to actually be like you fly wherever you want, like in No Man's Sky or whatever, or Elite Dangerous. But they decided, no, this is not working because of some limitation that they had or probably made themselves. Initially, they wanted you, most likely, to be able to travel everywhere. But, again, they scrapped it.
To space exploration, a bit more into the video. But first, I want to move on to the other section of the video.
The bad. That should be all of the
Then,
section.
Bethesda generally make great games. They make some really good RPGs. Although that said, I've never played...
No, they don't. Fallout 4 was literally, yes, snarky, yes, no, snarky, no. Now, it did have some great elements. For example, I absolutely love the fact that I could play Fallout 4 as the leader of the Minutemen, and yet in reality, in actuality, I was the leader of the Institute. Because I did actually have some very interesting options and dialogue options in some places where you don't actually have to engage the Minutemen. You literally come with a bunch of sins behind you and so you tell the Minutemen, hey, we got work here, boys. I'm your leader, and we got and these sins gotta do something here, okay? And then we're like, oh, this is strange, but okay. Those were good roleplay elements. Very few, but at least they existed. In Starfield, no character is convincing. The writing is super bad. And there's no moments like that. There's only one way. There's only two ways any situation can ever come out: fight or don't fight.
6 all that much. But Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Fallouts 3 and 4, however, have had thousands of hours put into them, and I've enjoyed every single one of those hours. So I went into Starfield with the expectation of more of the same. Does it deliver?
No.
Well, yes and no. It's a mix.
It doesn't
There's certainly
deliver at
more
all.
positives than negatives by far. However, in some areas, Starfield is a big step back compared to the 12-year-old Skyrim. There's two reasons to my...
I mean, Skyrim's probably the worst example of this, because in Skyrim you don't have options. Skyrim is as optionalless as Starfield, if we're being completely honest. But in Skyrim, at least you have the choice of doing something. In Starfield, you're literally forced to. Again, they don't give you even an option to say, no, I don't want to join Constellation. No, I don't want to fly away from this mining colony and do something else. They give you vague no's, but they are written so badly, it doesn't even seem like... It's not immersive at all. I don't know what's the word for this, but it's so bad. The dialogue is just so bad. They're not convincing at all. The reasons they give you for joining Constellation are non-existent. You're literally forced to say yes. You might as well not even have a choice, honestly.
Bidding for this, firstly, Skyrim and Fallout offer huge game worlds. Sure, the maps for these games may be smaller than other open-world RPG games. However, they are
big enough,
packed with all manner of things that very much make them feel alive. From the first moments of leaving the Vault 111 and witnessing the massive open worlds in Fallout 4, to roaming the countryside in Skyrim and venturing between Solitude and Whiterun, every part of those game worlds feels connected and alive. Sure, there might be some loading screens when entering cities, caves or buildings, but the interconnectedness of the world is very much present.
There's way less quick travel in Starfield. Is pretty much on average just loading screen, wait 2 seconds, loading screen, wait a couple of seconds more, a loading screen. That's Starfield pretty much, honestly. It is literally a loading game simulator for traveling.
And these worlds feel cohesive because of that. Starfield, on the other hand, though, feels bounded in more ways than just one. The cities of Neon and New Atlantis are truly amazing. I've really enjoyed walking around them and they've been a pleasure to experience. Aquila, meanwhile, is great too in its own way, but very different to those others. So too are the many settlements and outposts that can be found throughout the galaxy. Yet unfortunately, so many of those locations feel isolated and bounded.
Yep.
The loading screens are a large part of that. They make these areas feel like instances and self-contained. Yet somehow I feel that there's far more to this sense of isolation than just that.
The huge sense of, I checked out the Steam achievements, and the first achievement that you get into the game, which is like pretty much like 10 minutes in, get into space, is only achieved by 85% of players, which means 15% of players on Steam didn't even last 20 minutes in this game. And you know why? Because Starfield has the worst intro gameplay of any Bethesda game by far, okay? What happens in Skyrim? Well, you start on a wagon, then you get attacked by a dragon. You pick which location you want to go through. You go through a place. You get to loot a bunch of cool stuff on the way, and then you get out, and then you are in the wide open world. Yeah, sure, it always pretty much leads you to River Run, but hey, at least it feels free. What happens in Starfield, though, and by the way, this is pretty much the same. The same is almost for all the games. Like, you know, every Fallout, you pretty much start in, well, except New Vegas, you pretty much start in a vault. You do things into the vault a little bit. You have a bunch of options. You have a bunch of cool things to do, and then you go outside to the wide open world, right? But in Starfield, it's different. You go into a cave. First of all, there's an elevator, which takes too long. The talking is just dumb and boring. It's very on the nose, just boring and annoying. It takes too long, and literally for the first 15 minutes of the game, you're not doing anything. You're just standing there waiting for NPCs to talk a little bit, and that's pretty much it. It is dumb. It is absolutely the dumbest thing ever. You get so bored while waiting for the NPCs to walk at this snail's pace that you start shooting people with the mining tool. And guess what? Nothing happens when you shoot them. It's completely boring and dumb and stupid. So that takes away hugely from the game. The literal first 15 minutes of the game are unbearably sad and bad. Okay? And after that, what happens? Well, you get to fight with pirates for 30 seconds, then they all die, and then you have the most awkward conversation again in the history of ever between two characters. Whenever there's a conversation in Starfield between two characters, it just feels bad. Conversation with one character on average already feels bad, not gonna lie, but two characters, even worse. Then you go into space, you fly, you have a single ship combat thingamajiggy, and then what happens? Well, you're back into a cave. Well, this time it's not a cave, it's a house, but it's so dark it looks like a cave anyway, and then you need to go through that place. Starfield is absolutely overcluttered with garbage. It looks like an unkept frat house full of only boys where a woman has never stepped into and never sorted out anything. Like, it's overfilled with garbage, and you need and Bethesda, by the way, understood that, so they gave you a tool that actually highlights interactable objects, because they understood how absolutely dumb and overclouded the game is. So, you literally will use the tool that highlights interactable objects and pickable objects for, like, the first 30 minutes of being in that stupid house, because you're just not used to it, and it's such an absolute pain. And then you figure out at one point, wait a minute, picking up none of this is actually good or useful. It's garbage, it's trash. And after going through the house for like 30 minutes, where you get to kill, like, I don't know, 10 pirates maybe-ish, something around that, which is very boring, by the way, you know? Guess what? Well, then you're off to the next location. And then you get placed into the main city without a map, and everything you find in the main city is fucking boring. The first shop you find is a coffee shop where you literally buy actual coffee. There's nothing to talk to with any NPC. It's just sad. It is just literally the saddest experience ever. So yeah, Starfield by far is the worst Bethesda game by that. And you know, That's pretty much like the first 2 or 3 hours of gameplay that I just described. For some more, if you want to run around the planet, if you don't know that there's nothing in the planet, on the planet, I should say. It is what it is. It's like, yeah, for 5 hours into the game, 2 to 5 hours into the game, there's literally nothing to do. It's shit. It's the worst Bethesda game by far, just from this aspect alone.
In short, when it comes to Skyrim and Fallout, this way the world felt alive wasn't just to do with the world's map, there was other tech going on as well. So most notable of all the many things that made this possible was the game's Radiant AI. This tech enabled
Radiant
NPCs
AI?
to have their own lives. Store owners, for example, would work set hours, then close shop, go home and have dinner and then go to sleep.
Basic.
Sometimes I'd watch them during their life and see how they would have encounters and
Dude, almost no NPCs actually have these radiant lives. All they do is just go from point A to point B. That's it. And usually that's their shop and then that's their house. I mean, it's cool that the house is locked when they're at the shop and the shop is locked when they're at the house, but that's pretty much it. And same goes for Starfield. It has none of that because none of that matters.
conversations with other NPCs. Sure, these conversations were generic, sometimes dull, and occasionally downright weird. That's why we've got so many memes about that sort of thing out there. But the fact that the NPCs had their own life added so much to these game worlds.
I don't know
It's
about
something
that
that
one.
makes Bethesda RPGs really stand out from the crowd. And this was just something that, well, it wasn't just limited to shop owners, was it? But almost all NPCs in the game. Some of them would wander from towns to wilderness, others from town to town. And this type of thing just adds so much life to the games.
I mean, yeah, I guess he's technically right about that, but that never really mattered too much, honestly. It's just the fact that they slept and that was kind of it. It was cool that they did that, but to call that like a huge deal, no. It's like, but by Bethesda standards, I guess that's a huge deal. But by any normal human standards, that's not a big deal.
Starfield, on the other hand, is a massive step backwards, and I don't really understand why. While some NPCs in Starfield seem to they do have life patterns and keep to timetables of sorts, the vast majority certainly do not. Store owners and...
Dude, at least this guy's being fit. I saw one guy say, "Oh, every NPC looks alive in this game. It's amazing." Bruh, no they don't. They literally just walk circles. That's it. They don't even travel between... Well, they do actually travel between districts. They do use elevators and shit. But, man, that's just so sad.
Office workers sit at their desks 24/7. They don't move. They don't change. They don't do anything. Towns and cities are busy regardless of the time of day.
I have not noticed this because honestly I could not be asked more. I'm a pickpocket, so if an NPC is staying still in a spot for all their lives, I mean, that's good. That's really good.
And whilst there may be some changes to crowd density, it really isn't that significant. In short then, the NPCs in Starfield are background clutter rather than background characters, and this really does make a massive difference to the game overall.
Like, for example, whoever designed the first city at the bare minimum that people interact with, Atlantis or however it was called, I already forgot, like, they put no actual thought in designing it for people finding it for the first time. Again, the first shops you encounter are bad. The first marker you encounter in the game literally tells you, okay, now go to another loading screen. It's so stupid. It's just bad. Whoever designed that city is just made it the most dullest thing ever. The only good thing in the starting city is, the illegal arts dealer or whatever it's supposed to actually be, like a drug dealer or whatever. That guy. And that's like one very basic simple fetch quest that's supposed to show you, oh, behind this loading screen there's another place. But actually useful shops, by the way. But, it's stupid anyway. It is so dull. It is so stupid. Because Well, I said the coffee shop is the first thing you encounter, but well, that's not technically true. You encounter 3 completely useless shops, that from one of which is the coffee shop. But at least I'll give you this, Bethesda. At least those shops are open spaces, okay? At least those shops are not behind loading screens. But for some stupid reason, while you travel to a different part of town behind a loading screen, every shop becomes a loading screen. There's literally that is the only place where shops are open in that city. Every other district, every other location behind a loading screen, every other shop is a different loading screen again. It is insane.
Whilst to some people this might not make that much difference, to me it is a huge blow to the game. And it really does reduce the immersiveness that would otherwise be there. Personally then, I feel that this, combined with all the areas of the game feeling bounded and instanced, makes Starfield feel far less alive than, say, Skyrim, for example. Okay,
They're
so
good.
I talked about the limitations I found in Starfield first, because they really do help frame the parts that I have.
If he says combat, we're stopping the video right there, because no.
Enjoyed. Despite those limits the game has, none of them have prevented me from enjoying the game. I do still feel that Starfield is a good game. Whilst the space travel is certainly the weakest part of the game, it still contains enough to add a lot of value to Starfield. Like I said, the spaceships are a significant part of the game, and whilst it's true to say that their use is optional in many ways, largely thanks to fast travel, for those who want to make the most of them, spaceships are a huge part of Starfield. The space encounters, ship-to-ship combat, shipboarding, zero-G, first-person combat, looting and other activities have all been engaging, and I've spent hours at a time doing
it's actually pretty stupid.
all of these things. But the 2 things I've enjoyed the most in Starfield, however, are the side quests and the planetary exploration. So regarding quests, long-term viewers of this channel will be aware that I've said numerous times in the past that I find the main quests in Bethesda RPGs to be uninspiring and poorly written. That's also true of Starfield. It was true of Skyrim and...
Wait, dude, you're supposed to actually say the good. Not more. I love it when these reviews that say Starfield is good, it's like, okay, when it comes to the bad, they actually tell you bad things, but when it comes to the good, for some reason, they continue saying bad things about the game. Like, what part, how is calling the main storyline that is, by the way, it's true, it's bad, good? How is calling the main storyline bad good in any way? I don't understand this. And by the way, the main storyline is pretty much the best part about Starfield, even though it's bad.
Oblivion and all their other games, the writing in the main quest for Starfield I do feel is dull, and the dialogue options that the player has feel extremely dull as well. In fact, I've played through the main quest about 3/4 of the way through and eventually decided to stop. I just couldn't take it anymore.
Smart.
And I've little interest in working my way through that to get to New Game Plus.
I played 50 hours of Skyrim. I did not even complete like 50% of the main quest, if I'm being honest, or something like that. Fallout 3, the original one, I didn't also complete the main quest ever. Fallout New Vegas completed main quest multiple times, because it was a good main quest.
Or indeed any other part of the story. The side quests, however, I found to be very strong and also a lot of fun.
How?
The Mantis quest, for example,
How is find my miner who got lost in a cave and give him a healing pack fun?
Across unexpectedly without really being aware of what I was getting into. The Crimson Fleet quest has also been great, as have many of the other side quests. Also, there are numerous random quests that have sent me into some seriously impressive locations throughout the game. Some of these side quests have been very simple, such as fetch or delivery missions. Others have had a lot more depth and been set within great environments. All of this, then, has really made the game feel very much alive. And despite what I've said about the lack of radiant AI in Starfield, or the reduction of it, the fact that there are so many side quests and encounters all throughout the game and throughout the settled systems really does help bring Starfield to life for me. The other part of the game I've been really enjoying is landing on planets.
Yeah, I can already tell that this is gonna be a fun planet. Look at that. It's rocks and dirt. At least it's not a sad color of rocks and dirt. I guess that's a plus. There's nothing good about landing on the planets. Landing on planets is just you running in a direction without stopping because there's nothing interesting on the way there. It's like, stop, please.
Been really enjoying is landing on planets and then
How?
setting out to
Why?
see what I can discover. And for some reason, it
You
seems
can't discover anything, relax.
that a bunch of people out there don't really enjoy the barren planets. And yeah,
Oh, no shit they don't. Why would they?
90% of the planets in Starfield are barren. But personally,
Well, by the way, the planets that aren't barren, the 10%, they also don't have anything actually in them except like two locations or something. It's not really great anyway.
found them, well, they make me more than happy to roam their surfaces. All of the planets have various locations on them. Sometimes this is a simple planetary trait to find. Other times it can be a large base or even a cave. All of them have
Even a cave. How about 90%? Caves are created of like, I don't know, 5 different tiles that just repeat constantly. If you have been in 3 caves, chances are you already know how the cave is gonna look because that's literally how it works. Dude, this is not a bonus. Finding a cave is not fun. Especially considering the cave is gonna be pretty much empty. Finding a base is not fun because it's literally like I just can't.
been worth exploring, and sure, sooner or later these become repetitive with similar or even
They
these
become very fast repetitive. Not become repetitive. They're pretty much repetitive from the second cave you find.
exact same layouts. But for me, that's really not a problem. The planets with flora and fauna, meanwhile, have been even more interesting to roam and explore.
How? It's pretty stupid and boring. Sometimes you have lost the last flower and you need like 30 minutes to find it because, reasons. It's dumb.
Ironically, whilst the NPCs found at outposts, bases and other places of course don't have too much in the way of sensible AI, their very presence really does add depth to the world. For more of my thoughts on exploration, do check.
Dude, this is what I'm talking about good reviews of this game. Well, there's NPCs. Sure, maybe they are literally decorations. They don't even talk to you, but they're there, which is big good. Dude, no, it's not. It's such ridiculous levels of cope.
Check out my video on what is it like to explore in Starfield. I'll make sure to link that in the video description. I don't want to talk too much more about exploration at this point because I've done it before, but do be aware that it is, for me, a very important part of the game. Now, as with any game, there's been some unexpected things with Starfield. Most of these have been good surprises, actually. One thing that
Yeah, press X to doubt, not gonna lie.
continues to surprise me is the sheer scale of some of the outposts, bases, and space stations, and even spaceships that I've visited. Some of these underground
How is that scale impressive?
complexes, for example, are truly impressive. There was one there that felt like a bit of a silo, sort of an underground military abandoned complex, which had this big silo that opened up to allow spaceships to land inside of them.
Okay.
Another surprise is that some of the quests have been surprisingly good. The Mantis one that I mentioned before is a great example of this. I think that perhaps the biggest surprise for me, however, is the ease with which Starfield allows you to move from one activity to another. Whether that's following your current quests, exploring space or planets, or even building a new...
Wow. Yeah, like... most games allow you to do that. It's just unbelievable amounts of cope. The cope here could fill an ocean. If only cope could be used as food. Starvation would be non-existent forever. This man alone could provide so much sustenance to Copium that the whole universe could be fed. He would destroy the food industry.
your ship. Switching between activities is a breeze, and it can all be done without any unnecessary time sinks. And for me, that is a really big deal. Because one of the biggest turn-offs for me in any game is time wasting. And yes, this includes my pet peeve, long distance space travel, or having to search for something in unknown or random locations. So I'm really glad that this doesn't exist in Starfield. When it comes to gameplay, Starfield is a known quantity.
Oh
Once you
boy.
get to grips with the game, what it offers is very clear. It's easy to achieve the goals you set yourselves, and that to me is very important.
Okay, this is probably the worst review I have ever seen of Starfield so far. Oh lord, oh lord, oh lord. The good, bad, and unexpected. Well, I expected everything here, I'm not gonna lie, boys. Anyway, this was Cause said thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. And this was, does he even have a plug? Oh, no he doesn't. Obsidian Ant. We have already seen a video by him before, by the way. It was less scope than this, but you know, still. Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball. Anyway, this was Cause said thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Have a nice day. Bye bye.